Ouch!
As I was heading towards the stairs after getting off the train, a scream-like sound startled me. Turning towards the noise, I saw a girl with a white cane had fallen over. An apparent middle-aged man, who seemed to have bumped into her, was just standing there looking down at her without helping.
Damn, in the way.
The man clicked his tongue and muttered an expletive, then carelessly walked over the tactile paving and continued on his way. The girl seemed unable to get up, having fallen inside the safety line. I quickly rushed over to her. "Are you okay?" I assumed someone visually impaired might be uncomfortable being suddenly touched, so I consciously kept a distance and spoke to her, especially since she's a young lady. Besides, the person who scared her and acted rudely was a man. It'd be really scary if a stranger whispered into your ear out of nowhere.
I'm fine.
The girl said, trying to stand up, but immediately winced and sat back down. Seems like she twisted her ankle. Just then, the sign lit up indicating the arrival of the next train. "Sorry, can you lean on my shoulder for a bit?" I offered, but she looked uncertain about what to do. "The train's coming soon. It's safer if we move back a bit. Hope it's okay if I help you by holding your arm." When I addressed her, she nodded in agreement. Helping her up, her face twisted even more with pain. There's no way she could walk on her own. "Were you planning to catch the train heading downtown from this platform earlier?" When I asked her, she explained she was heading home. "I do have some errands near this station, but I can't just leave her like this." The train was about to arrive. On the spur of the moment, I decided to accompany her home. She hesitated at first, but realizing she couldn't manage alone, she agreed. Soon, we boarded the arriving train. I figured she'd be wary about a stranger suddenly accompanying her home, so I introduced myself, told her my name's Ryan Miller, a 30-year-old working in a specialized trading company. Talking rapidly, I pulled out my smartphone and typed into the chat app that I use to communicate with my boss. "I'm really sorry. Something has come up, so I'll be late." As soon as I sent the message, my boss called me back as if he had been waiting. "I can't answer the phone. I'm on a train." I ended the call unilaterally and sent another message, to which my boss immediately replied,
"I'll handle things here. Just get here as soon as possible."
I could almost feel the anger radiating from the text. I was afraid, because my boss is a dignified person, but I hoped he would understand once I explained the situation. It was all I could do to hope. Perhaps I had been too focused on typing. It seemed I had answered the girl's quiet question with an incoherent response.
What?
The girl raised her voice in surprise. "Oh, sorry. What were we talking about?" I looked up from my smartphone and faced the girl.
Did you have something to attend to?
She probably sensed people's presence more precisely because she couldn't see. Maybe she had noticed that I was a bit flustered and that something was off. The girl looked worried. I had been so preoccupied on the platform. I thought she was a young girl, but on closer inspection, she might be a high school student. That would make sense. The girl, holding a white cane, was walking alone, so she couldn't be that young. I apologized to her for worrying her and explained that I had some work-related matters, but had already informed them, so it was okay. She introduced herself as Mia Thompson and shared that she is a freshman attending a school for the visually impaired. I didn't know because I rarely use the station, but it seems to be the nearest one to her school. Today, she had committee activities and got out later than the usual dismissal time. And she isn't completely blind. She is what is generally called visually impaired. Since I, for my part, was preoccupied with my issues, worried about being late for an important matter, I didn't notice, but Mia sitting next to me is a bit shaky. It must have been a significant issue for Mia, who started commuting by train alone from high school. Such an irresponsible person. It's embarrassing as an adult, older than them, and as a man. Hoping to alleviate her fear a bit, I intentionally spoke about light topics until we reached her nearest station. I am clumsy, so I have plenty of small mistakes to talk about. Sometimes I feel pathetic, but it is good to be of help in this situation. Her tense face gradually relaxed. When we got off the train together, she called home from the platform after asking me. She was going to ask to be picked up, but unfortunately, she couldn't get through. Perhaps her family was worried about Mia, who was returning home later than usual, and went out to pick her up.
My mom is pretty scatterbrained. She might have left her cell at home and headed to the station.
Seeing Mia fidgeting shyly, I felt the adolescence from her for the first time since we met. See, I told you I'm clumsy. I do the same kind of things. Trying to console her, she showed a shy smile. I decided to give Mia a piggyback since she said her home is not more than a 15-minute walk away. We shouldn't pass by if we take a cab. I know I'm just an old man, but I shouldn't stink. I said in a purposely playful tone, and she smiled.
I'm heavy.
She seemed reluctant as I piggybacked her, but in reality, she was very light. However, an accident occurred as soon as I piggybacked her. My pants tore at the seat when I braced myself. A loud ripping noise was made, and she noticed it too, and we both laughed. We ran into her mom when we were about halfway to the house. It was a straight road, so it was nice that we didn't pass by each other. I explained to her mom, who looked surprised and dumbfounded, while still piggybacking her. Her mom thanked me and tried to take over piggybacking her, but it would be too much of a burden for a woman, no matter how light Mia is. I declared that I would carry her home, and we headed there while talking. It was my second time introducing myself. When we arrived, I slowly let Mia down at the front door, and the two of them tried to keep me from leaving.
I'll see your pants right away.
I appreciated their kindness, but I had things to do, so I excused myself and left. I called my boss as I headed to the station, thinking he surely wouldn't be waiting any longer. "Just get here now," he yelled, and I ran to the station. Yes, today was the day of my arranged date, set up by my boss. I arrived at the station, where I met Mia again, and by the time I reached the designated restaurant, it was over an hour past our originally agreed time. While hastily fixing my disheveled hair from running frantically, I noticed my boss and a woman sitting at the table, messily fixing my disheveled hair. I am so sorry for being extremely late. I apologized as soon as I saw them. Just as the woman I was supposed to meet began to speak, a loud voice came from behind.
Since Alice said, "Let's wait a bit more," I had no choice but to wait. What's with that attire?
Fitzgerald, the father of today's matchmaking partner, Alice. It seemed he had stepped out and had just returned to witness the tear in my trousers.
Is that the appropriate dress code for a matchmaking meeting? We are being taken for granted.
Fitzgerald was furious. Before I could make any excuses, he walked past me, grabbed Alice's hand, and made her stand up.
This meeting is off with someone who can't even keep time.
He forcefully pulled the resisting Alice and left the restaurant.
What are you going to do? You trying to ruin my reputation, Ryan.
My boss glared at me and hastily followed the two. Fitzgerald's company is an important client of ours. Alice, who is the only daughter of the president, is regarded as the future president of the company. Rumor had it that, in addition to basic academic skills, she had been taught business management and imperial wisdom by her dad since she was young. And I have managed to anger such a person. My head hurts. Afterwards, no matter how much I tried to contact my boss, he neither answered the phone or responded to my messages on the chat tool. The next day, I went to the office with much trepidation, and it was like walking on pins and needles. It seems my boss has spilled the beans to everyone in the office about the broken engagement. Everyone in the workplace blamed me. In the first place, having an arranged date with the heiress of Fitzgerald Trading was out of my league. But I only went because I was relentlessly asked to. I initially declined when my boss brought up the meeting as it was a burden. However, it seemed that I was the one specifically requested by the other party. I have no professional interaction with our clients, so even my boss didn't know why it had to be me. My boss, unable to get his apology accepted by Fitzgerald, was in deep trouble and took it out on me each time. After enduring an uncomfortable week in the office, an unexpected person came to visit me. 9 days after the meeting day, Alice, Fitzgerald's daughter, visited the company. My boss and I dealt with it and led her to the reception room. There was no sign of displeasure from her.
It seems you helped Mia.
Alice said to me with a smile. Mia is the name of the visually impaired girl I helped on the day of the meeting. I hadn't explained the reason for my tardiness to Alice, so how did she know her name? While I was lost in thought and unable to speak, Alice threw more mysterious words at me.
I'm friend with her. So, I asked her what happened that day.
Friends with almost a 10-year age gap. My confused face and my boss, who's more out of the loop, were explained to by Alice. Fitzgerald Trading is also committed to charitable activities, inviting students from special needs schools, care schools, and schools for the blind to performances by circus troupes and theater groups funded by the company. The employees are also active in volunteer activities, and Alice has been involved since her student days. At first, she was reluctant, seeming like a hypocrite. She met Mia during one of those activities, volunteering for a reading program at an elementary school for the blind. Alice was always aware that she was different from others, due to the daughter of CEO Fitzgerald. Her friendships were largely formed due to her status, and she never had someone she could truly open her heart to. However, meeting Mia has become an opportunity for her to face herself. After she finished reading the book, Mia approached her and shared her impressions. Such a kind voice. It seemed to reflect a kind personality. She praised. Alice is often misunderstood as a strong-willed woman or highly prideful person, but she felt saved by Mia's words, who didn't judge by appearances. Listening to this, I reflected that I too had been judging her without knowing her. I thought she's high maintenance and wouldn't get along with me without knowing anything about Alice, just by her appearance and rumors. Her interaction with Mia became a catalyst, and Alice became more proactive in volunteering, participating unrelated to the company's operations. 5 days after the arranged date, she went to the regular volunteer activity at the school for the blind and heard about me from Mia, and she understood the reason for my tardiness.
She was really concerned about your clothing and talked about wanting to pay for the repairs.
Remembering the embarrassing moment when I showed Alice my torn pants, my face turned red.
I've come to apologize for my father's rudeness.
Alice said. She found out about the circumstances of that day and wanted to apologize in person, so she went out of her way to come to the office. It's understandable that your dad got angry, so please, don't worry about it. Even as I conveyed this, she shook her head and apologized once again. She began to speak.
Actually, there's another thing I want to talk about.
She started confessing with an awkward air. It turned out that, actually, Alice and I had met when she was a high school student, 10 years ago. Back then, Alice was a high school senior, preparing for SAT. She generally studied in libraries, but when things weren't going well, she would study in a cafe to change her mood.
One day, someone placed a paper coaster on my table where I was constantly sighing.
I braced myself, having a feeling I knew what this was about. 10 years ago, I was a college student and worked part-time in a cafe. To summarize what she recounted, the coaster had written, "You're always studying hard. Keep it up." When she looked around, she met eyes with a staff member who was cleaning another table, and he smiled warmly at her. Although he was polite and formal during service, he seemed somewhat aloof, and this friendly demeanor apparently made her heart flutter. She even checked the name tag on his chest and saw it said, Ryan. From that moment, Alice's one-sided love began. However, the staff quit his job 6 months later, and she couldn't see him anymore. It became a fleeting romantic memory. When my eyes met hers after she finished talking that much, my heart won't stop racing. I should remember meeting a beauty like Alice frequently for 6 months, but I don't remember at all. As if seeing through my heart, she added,
I only started caring about my appearance after I started working. I wasn't interested in fashion until I graduated. I was plain.
She, who always stands tall and dignified, shrinks shyly and mumbles in a stooped posture. Seeing her like that, I suddenly remember a regular high school girl in a uniform. Alice was extremely surprised when she saw me during a business meeting at our company, because the cafe attendant she had a crush on appeared before her in a suit, and when her dad told her it's time to settle down and brought up an arranged date, she mentioned my name. You must have been opposed by your dad, suggesting someone more outstanding from a much larger company, right? I figured it might be hard for Alice to bring it up, so opened my mouth first. She nods with reservation.
But I opposed. It was my first defiance.
Alice smiles faintly and shares the details of her battle with her dad.
I've always been a good girl following what my dad said. I wanted to at least choose my marriage partner, so I insisted. But then it all turned out like that.
I realize that I have not only put my boss in a bad position by being late, but also ruined Alice's face. However, it must have been convenient for Fitzgerald, my tardiness. He was against it from the start, so it might have even felt lucky that he could easily find an excuse to break it off.
After hearing from Mia, I am convinced that you are exactly as I had imagined outside of work as well.
It's nice to hear that, but she might be disappointed because there's an aspect that's too embellished.
Would you like to be friends with me?
Sure, being suddenly told about a marriage meeting made me feel awkward. But of course, I welcome being friends. After that, we started participating in volunteer activities together. I met Mia again and got along well. After such days continued for several months, I had the chance to meet Mr. Fitzgerald privately.
I have heard from my daughter. I am sorry about that day.
He apologized for leaving without hearing the circumstances on the day of the marriage meeting. It was natural to scold me for being late, and I had no grudge. But it's good that the misunderstanding was cleared up. Alice, while observing work manners, does wear makeup during work, but she basically doesn't wear any in her private time. Seeing her innocent face and personality just like when she was in high school, I am gradually being drawn to her.